In 2003, on a cool October day, sailors found the body of a woman floating in the Atlantic Ocean. The cops were shocked when they saw the body. It had been in the water for so long that it was almost impossible to tell who it was. Even worse, rock crabs were stuck to the pale legs of the body, which made some detectives sick. It looked like the case had reached a dead end because the body could not be identified. But soon, new signs showed up that led to the shocking truth. Who took the time to throw the body out into the ocean so far away that no one would ever find it? Could there be a bigger plot going on? You will not want to miss any part of this exciting case. Check out the whole video to find out who is going on. The case took place in New Jersey, which is one of the most economically stable states in the US and a famous tourist spot known for its beautiful beaches like Cape May. But on October 8, 2003, a finding that shocked the whole country turned a beautiful day into a sad one. While on their usual trip, a group of fishermen saw something strange floating in the water. One of them was shocked to see that it was a woman's body when they looked more closely. The cops were called right away, and they got there quickly to take the body away and start their investigation. Detective James Theisel, who was in charge of the investigation, was shocked by how bad the body looked. The body had been in the water for so long that there was no way to tell who it belonged to. The fact that a rock crab was stuck to the woman's inner thigh made things even worse. The detective almost got sick. The fact that the body had been on the ocean floor for a while made sense, since these crabs live in deep water. The US Coast Guard, USCG, joined the investigation and helped with the autopsy, which showed that the person who died had been killed. She had a heavy metal chain around her ankles and tape on her hands and feet to make sure she would never come back to the top. The killer was caught because the body had risen to the surface, revealing their horrible crime. Investigators thought the person who did it didn't think the body would come back to life, which left a scary mystery to solve. It was still very hard to figure out how the killer got the body to that part of the ocean. Detective James Theisel thought that finding the victim was the most important part of the case. But they ran into a big problem. The body had been in the water for so long that the fingerprints were wavy and crooked. This might have made it impossible for the probe to go any further. The cops didn't give up, though. Professionals were called in, and they used a clever method to fix the prints. They wrapped thread around the finger joints and injected saline solution under the skin. It worked, and they were finally able to figure out who the victim was. The results were terrible. The body belonged to Kimberly Holton, 16, who had been lost for more than a week in Delaware, which is about 65 kilometers from Cape May. The New Jersey State Police didn't waste any time after getting this new information. They put together a group of investigators and went to Delaware to find out what had happened. Based on what they found, Kimberly Holton was born in Kent County, USA, on November 4, 1986. She had a hard childhood, which is sad. Because Kimberly's biological mother had a drug problem, she was taken in by a child services group. She was adopted by Ronald and Lorraine Machette in Delaware after being taken in by several foster families. They provided her with a stable home, which gave her much-needed protection in a life that was otherwise very hard. But Kimberly's problems came back when Heather, her bigger sister, moved in. Kimberly was a few years younger than Heather, who had also been adopted by the Machetes. Things between the sisters quickly got tense, which led to more fighting and what seemed to be the start of Kimberly's downward slide. People who adopted Kimberly and Heather from the Machetes had thought that the two would get along, but that didn't happen. They fought a lot, and what started as small differences quickly turned into major fights. Everything at home became stressful and heavy, which made things hard for everyone. One of Kimberly's best friends, Destiny Andrews, said that she was a loving and giving person who really loved animals. Destiny thought that Kimberly would have become a veterinarian or veterinary assistant if she had lived. Even though things were hard at home, Kimberly rarely showed it. She told Destiny about the problems her family was having, but she had a special way of hiding how sad she was by acting happy and upbeat. Andrews said, "That's how she dealt with everything." He meant that Kimberly's bubbly attitude was how she dealt with bad feelings. Kimberly was more than just a good friend. She also worked hard in school and never missed a minute of it. So one day, when she didn't show up to catch the bus, Destiny knew right away that something was wrong. Mrs. Sher Welsh, Kimberly's first foster mother from Williamstown, New Jersey, also talked about how hard it was for her to grow up. She told them that the girl didn't have toys like other kids and often went hungry. "These bad things that happened to me as a child left deep mental scars." Kimberly didn't take the bus to school as normal on the morning of September 30th, 2003, 8 days before her body was found floating in the ocean. Adoptive mother, Mrs. Lorraine Machette, had been waiting all day for her daughter to come home, so she called the cops to say she wasn't there. Because they were determined to find the truth, the New Jersey State Police and the Delaware State Police, DSP, worked together to learn more about Kimberly's past and the events leading up to her disappearance. The mother, Mrs. Lorraine Machette, said that Kimberly had been missing before. In the past, Kimberly had gotten lost and then found her way back home on her own. But this time felt different. As the days went by, Mrs. Lorraine's worry changed into fear when Kimberly didn't come back. She knew something terrible had happened. These clues made the police think there were bigger problems in the foster home. But when police looked into how Kimberly died, they didn't find any obvious signs of injury. It wasn't until she was checked out by a doctor that they found Kimberly had serious head injuries, probably from being hit with something hard or falling from a very high place. There was a metal chain around Kimberly's ankles that police found. It was one of the most important pieces of evidence they found. Detective James Thistle saw that the chain had a number stamped on each link. Because of this, the police were able to track it down to a Lowe's home improvement shop close to Kimberly's house. The manager at the store used their method to keep track of the chain's information by using its length and stamped numbers. The search showed that the chain, a padlock, and a concrete block were all bought the day after Kimberly went missing. The timestamp on the receipt helped the police find security film of the checkout counter that showed 2 men buying the items. The video was not very clear, and because the things were paid for in cash, it was hard to identify the men. Because investigators didn't have any good leads, they chose to show pictures of the 2 men to the local media in the hopes that the public could help them. The answer came right away. They got a lot of tips, and one of them told them that one of the guys was Robert Brothers. To everyone's surprise, Robert called the cops and admitted that he was with Jacob Jones when Jones bought the things. But Robert said he had nothing to do with Kimberly's death and that the items were bought for weightlifting. Even though he denied it, the new information added to the puzzle of the case. The cops didn't think Robert Brothers had a reason to lie, so they asked him if he knew why Jacob Jones might be mad at Kimberly. Robert said the name of a person, Heather. Heather is Kimberly's foster sister and Jacob's lover. When the police questioned Heather, she sobbed as she said she and Kimberly had fought, but she claimed it was over small things, like taking Kimberly's clothes or makeup without asking. "I swear to God, I don't know what happened to Kim," Heather said when asked if she hated Kimberly. "The truth is, I don't know if Jacob is participating or not. I'm sure I'm not guilty." Jacob Jones, a 20-year-old junior at the University of Delaware, had never been in trouble with the law and had a perfect academic record. A reporter from the Delaware Post named Jeff Brown said that Jacob was in an aviation school, a licensed pilot, and an instructor at Dover Air Force Base. People often noticed that he rented planes for personal flights, which was strange given the situation. When the police asked Jacob about getting the chains, locks, and concrete block, he said it was for weightlifting. But when asked, he couldn't say where the things were now, and the cops didn't believe him at all. Even though the pressure was building, Jacob stuck to what he said and quickly asked for a lawyer. Another person who made the cops suspicious was Jacob's boss at the Air Force Base, who said that Jacob had been acting strangely for a few weeks. He had been turning up late or not at all, and when he did, he seemed irritated and angry for no reason. This change in behavior made the police even more suspicious. Jacob flew a Cessna plane from the Dover Air Force Base at 11:45 p.m. on September 30th, 2003, and came back just 2 hours later. The cops thought there might have been a second person involved, someone who could have helped Jacob move Kimberly's body, tie it to the plane, and drop it into the ocean. An autopsy showed that Kimberly's head injuries were probably caused by falling from a very high place. This backed the idea that her body had been thrown from the plane. The next thing the police had to do was figure out who the partner might be and why the crime was done. Then, on October 23, 2003, just 10 days after Kimberly's body was found, Jacob's father called the cops with a shocking message. He told them that Jacob had killed himself in his bedroom by shooting himself. But what really shocked the police was when Jacob told his parents what he did just minutes before he died. Jacob stated that he and Michael Keir, a friend of his who is 23 years old, had killed Kimberly Holton. Inspector Brown says that Jacob told his dad that Kimberly was making things difficult in the family, especially with his girlfriend Heather. Jacob committed the horrible crime with the help of Michael Keir because he felt he had to fix things. Michael and Jacob worked together as security guards at a nearby racetrack. They weren't close friends, but they worked together to do the horrible thing, even though they didn't know each other very well. Jacob's confession before he killed himself put light on the horrible details of the case and gave the police the clues they needed to find Kimberly Holton's killer. When detectives got new information, they quickly called Michael Keir in to be questioned. Michael said that Jacob asked him to pick up Kimberly on the evening of September 29, 2003, and take her to a hotel under the guise of helping Heather and Kimberly work out their problems. Michael took Kimberly to a convenience shop and then to a Budget Inn motel, as Jacob had told him to. When Kimberly went to the bathroom, Jacob told Michael about his plan to kill her and asked him to help him. Michael said he didn't want to help at first because he thought Jacob was crazy and wanted to leave, but Jacob told him he would kill him if he didn't. Michael gave in to pressure and said he would do what was asked of him. Michael grabbed Kimberly as she came out of the bathroom and held her down while Jacob put a pillow around her neck and wrapped a phone cord around it. She passed away early in the morning of September 30th, 2003. Michael revealed that he helped Jacob move Kimberly's body into the trunk of a car after the murder. It stayed there for a few hours before being flown over the Atlantic Ocean and dumped there. The cops said that the murder was very scary, from the planning to the brutal execution. The case shocked people in both Delaware and New Jersey. The cops finally arrested Michael Keir on October 24, 2003. Kimberly Holton's disappearance was first thought to be a case of runaway, but Jacob hadn't thought about how the body was finally found by the ocean's natural forces, which blew the whole plot apart. It felt like Kimberly's body hit concrete at over 200 km/h when it hit the water. Jacob's mistake ruined his plan in the end, letting the horrible truth come to light. Michael Keir was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy on January 6, 2004, and given a life term without the chance of parole. Heather, Kimberly's foster sister, was named in Jacob's confession, but there was no proof that she was directly involved in the murder or the crazy plan, so she wasn't charged. Kimberly's body was thrown away by throwing it from a plane into the Atlantic Ocean. This case is still one of the most shocking in recent history. Because of problems with his girlfriend, Jacob killed a young girl without any reason. He did it in a cold and planned way. The crime shocked people all over the US and showed how far Jacob and his victims were willing to go to hide their horrible crime. It's a very troubling story, not just because of how violent it was, but also because of how no one felt bad about what they did and how terrible the results were. The case of Kimberly Holton is still one of the most shocking and remembered crimes in US history.